Looks like we're ready to go. Perfect. Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone to the Lake Tahoe Community College Candidate Forum for Congressional District number 4. My name is Jeff DeFranco, and I serve as Superintendent President here at Lake Tahoe Community College. And this forum is one of our many efforts this fall to help educate our community about candidates and issues that are important to them, but most importantly, educate our students and help grow student voter participation and student voter turnout. We've had a number of events this year, from get out the vote and register to vote efforts. Our Student Senate hosted a very successful City Council candidate forum, so thanks to all of you that tuned in for that. And this evening, we have a forum for our Congressional District 4 candidates. I want to share that we did reach out to both Congressman Tom McClintock and candidate Bryn Kennedy in both their offices and tried to coordinate with both offices. Unfortunately, Congressman McClintock is unable to join us this evening. Also, a little bit about our format. We provided both candidates with 5 predetermined questions that were developed by the college. So they were aware of the content that will be shared, and we'll be covering those today after a little more introductory statements. We do hope and have extended an offer to Congressman Tom McClintock's office to continue and do a separate one-on-one conversation at a later time if that is possible for them. Again, our overarching goal tonight is to get information out to our community and really support our student get out the vote and registration efforts. This past year, LTCC has really doubled down on its student voter participation efforts. We have a long history of supporting student civic engagement and democratic learning. However, as the data from the National Study of Learning, Voting, and Engagement shows, there's more work to do. Fewer than half our eligible students actually voted in the 2016 and the 2018 elections, and only about 2/3 of our students are even registered to vote. And so this year, we partnered with the Secretary of State's Office of California to engage in the Ballot Bowl, which is really an effort to get more students registered to vote, and also the All-In Canvas Democracy Challenge. Again, these efforts, along with these forums that we're offering tonight, the previous City Council forum, are all intended to inform our students and our community and help encourage voter participation in the November 2020 election and beyond. So again, we are pleased to host tonight's event as part of these efforts, and that's the overview as far as what to expect for today. So again, I will kind of actually move us into our main event. First off, thank you, Ms. Bryn Kennedy, for joining us tonight. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you to the whole Lake Tahoe Community College community here for hosting this event.
Great, great. So, Bryn, is it okay if I refer to you as call you Bryn?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great.
You can just call me Bryn. No,
I didn't want to be too informal. Okay. So,
I
Bryn,
appreciate maybe the ask, but I'm
thank you. Great. So, Bryn, maybe you could just start off and tell us just a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for Congress.
Sure. Well, ironically enough, Jeff, I am not a politician. I am a businesswoman who spent the last 15 years working in the private sector, most of it at a company I started at my kitchen table and grew to operate all over the world. That company helped people work in all different ways, helped people innovate to work on the go or work remotely. And the interesting thing here is that is something that we're all dealing with now with COVID-19. So I've been thinking about this, how we change how we work for many, many years before the virus hit. And I even wrote a book about it. I grew up in a working class family where we had conservatives and liberals sitting around a dinner table, where much of my family served in the military and where both of my parents had cancer and battled the illness as well as the broken healthcare system. So, I have experienced many of the things that people in our community have, and I bring that to representing our community in Congress. I decided to run for Congress because Washington is broken. And it is not working for us today. It is literally the number one thing that I hear on the campaign trail virtually and when we used to do in person all across our district. I mean, look at where we are. We have chaos across our country. We have a COVID-19 pandemic that has put people out of work, kept people from school, and tragically killed more than 220,000 of our fellow Americans. We have wildfires that are worse than ever, threatening our community. And we have healthcare, Social Security, and Medicare under threat, things that so many people in our community rely on. I bring a new approach. I bring an approach to solving these problems that is forged in living in our community and caring about it, that is forged in 15 years in the private sector, working with people with all different viewpoints to solve problems. And most importantly, that brings together Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and people of all ages and perspectives to get our community back to normal. I'm really, really excited about the opportunity to represent our community and roll up my sleeves and work really hard on solving these issues for all of us.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. You touched on the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, this is top of mind for many individuals on our campus and our community. Our first question is focused on the response to the pandemic. So as you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on our community. It's impacted our college, our students. Here at LTCC, we've tried to prioritize the health and safety of our staff and students while still having continuity of student education, and then responding to all the additional financial and emotional needs of our community during this pandemic crisis. We have relied heavily on guidance and support from both the state of California, the federal government, the Centers for Disease Control to help advise our efforts and our response. What do you believe the next Congress should prioritize in helping colleges and communities respond to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, Jeff, I first just want to acknowledge what an incredibly difficult year this has been for everyone, for you as the president of the community college, for each and every student and your families listening tonight. This is truly an unprecedented time in our community and our country. And we are going through this with people like Tom McClintock, our current representative, who have used this pandemic to sow division and to pit us against each other and to denounce experts and scientists rather than solve the problem. I know that that's really hard for everyone listening tonight. And I look forward to bringing a new approach that puts people first and actually contains this virus so we can move forward. My approach is that firstly, we need to follow public health guidelines. You know, we know what we need to do. We need to listen to the experts. We need to wear our masks. We need to socially distance. We secondly need to get help to the American people, to our schools like Lake Tahoe Community College, and to our small businesses. Congress has not done this. While we have been suffering as a community, Congress has been fighting with each other instead of working for us. The third thing that we need to do is we need to innovate in how we work until this pandemic is done. You know, we will have more virtual work and learning, and I'm sure things that you all have been thinking a lot about and going through over the last few months, Jeff. And what we have will look a little bit different, but we can do that when we think, how do we innovate in how we work? When we invest in our infrastructure, our broadband, when we make sure every student has access to a laptop or an iPad to learn in a different way. You know, this is something that I've actually been thinking about for many, many years in the private sector. How do we innovate in how we learn and how we work? And in fact, my experience is very much made for this moment because I spent more than a decade thinking about it. So I just want you all to know that I very, very much understand what you're going through. This is a very difficult time. We are all in this together. And I look forward to getting Congress back to work so that we can follow our public health guidelines. We can get help to all of you, to your school and our other schools, to our small businesses. And we can all work together to innovate in how we do things to keep people safe, but also move forward with our community.
Great, thank you for sharing. So our next question really builds off the COVID-19 pandemic, but also the economic consequences that are being felt. So beyond the health and safety impacts to our community, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in severe economic consequences. This is particularly relevant here in Lake Tahoe, where our local economy relies heavily on tourism and hospitality, industries that have been really hit by the pandemic. What do you believe the role of the federal government is in local economic recovery? And specifically, what are your priorities in supporting the economic recovery of the Tahoe Basin?
Well, all across the country, we have 1 in 5 small businesses that have failed during this pandemic. We have millions of people who are out of work or whose jobs have been affected, and countless families, really struggling to make ends meet during this pandemic. We need to get help to our economy and to our small businesses and to the American people. I support extending the PPP program to support our small and independent businesses. I also support tax and regulatory breaks for those small independent businesses so that they can come out of this pandemic stronger. Small businesses are the backbone of our community. As you mentioned, Jeff, we have 15 million tourists a year that come to our district, and many of them spend money at our small independent businesses that have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic. So I want to partner with the SBA and partner with our local governments to create more access to capital to help our businesses fund expenses, and then work on tax and regulatory breaks to help them come out of this pandemic stronger. But we also have an opportunity here to design legislation to reignite our economy going forward. I support opportunity zone legislation to attract investment, to attract innovators starting new businesses in our community, to attract new small businesses starting, and to create new jobs as we come out of the pandemic. I also support investments in infrastructure and in housing. Those will create good jobs. We can finance it if we think creatively with things like an infrastructure bank, with grant programs, with a representative who will fight to bring your tax dollars back to our community. These are all things that we can do if we work together in Congress. The key thing here is that we need a representative who wants to work for our community and work with everyone to get our community back to normal and our economy back on track. I'm the only candidate in this race who has actually run a business. In fact, my opponent, McClintock, has never had a job outside of politics. So it is not hard to understand why he can't empathize with the small business that's struggling through this pandemic, or what it's like to be a worker in one of our local businesses. I can, and I will fight for all of you every single day in Congress.
Okay, we're going to move on. Our next question is about wildfires. As you may be aware, Lake Tahoe Community College has a fire academy program that we're very proud of due to the number of cadets that it places in working fire professional positions throughout the state. We also do a lot of training for continuing education and upskilling for public safety officers that are currently out in the field. And also for our community, obviously, wildfires of great concern. So more specifically, in 2020, California has experienced the highest fire year ever recorded. In terms of area, more than 3.6 million acres has burned. Here in South Lake Tahoe, we are all aware of the risk of wildfire. The Angora fire is still very fresh in many people's memory in our community. Prevention and response activity are a priority, and at LTCC, we try and play a role by not only our fire science programs, but also environmental science, forestry management, and all the other things that are part of the puzzle of the fire prevention solution. So specifically, the question to you, what do you believe is the role of the federal government in wildfire prevention and response, and how can Congress support the Tahoe Basin in wildfire prevention and response activities?
Well, Jeff, before I answer the question, I first just want to acknowledge all the great work that you guys do at Lake Tahoe Community College. That education is fairly unique in California. It's so important for people going into forest management and fire suppression, environmental science, as you said. And it's a really critical and special role that you guys play in the community. So thank you for your leadership on that.
Thank you.
With respect to what the federal government can do, a lot is the answer. And I'm going to talk us all through that. You know, a lot of the land in our district, the vast majority of our forested land is federal land. And the vast majority of the fires that we have in our state and in our district burn on federal land. So we have to have a representative in Washington that is keen to work together with our state, with our local governments, and with our private sector to manage that federal land effectively. We need to aggressively manage our forests. We need to do that by having funding for the Forest Service and by having a streamlined and smarter partnership between the Forest Service and the private sector. Some of you may have seen the article in the Sacramento Bee a few days ago about the broken procurement process, Viper, I think it's called, between the U.S. Forest Service and the private sector, that it has some of the available machinery that we need for fire suppression. We need to streamline those relationships. We need to bring smarter practices in to bring all of the stakeholders together to manage our forests. And in addition to that, we need to partner with our innovators. This is actually an incredible opportunity for our area. We have people who are doing small-scale biomass projects or creating an end market for wood chips or the prefab industry for clearing high-risk underbrush. We can create jobs. We can manage our forests to health. We can keep our community safe, and we can lead the nation in some of the technologies and solutions for the future. I really, really look forward to working between the government, between the private sector, and between our entrepreneurs and our new ideas to get our forests managed to health, to protect our community, and to ensure that we have prompt responses to keep us safe when a fire does break out.
Great, thank you for sharing. All right, as you are aware, California Community Colleges is the largest system of higher education in the world. Additionally, we serve the vast majority of students of color, low-income students, and first-generation students. Most students in California will actually attain their higher education through a community college. Yet, the existing state and federal funding structures result in both community colleges and the students we serve receiving lower levels of funding support. My question to you is, how do you view community colleges within the larger system of post-secondary education and economic resiliency? What role do they play? And then secondly, how can Congress, once again, you'll notice these questions are all about what could you do in Congress? How can Congress better support community colleges in fulfilling our mission of serving all students?
Well, I love the role that community colleges play. And I will tell you, it's very personal for me, Jeff. My father was the first in his family to get a college degree. He served in the military and he was able to get a college degree through our OTC. And after that, he became a community college teacher. He worked for decades as a community college teacher, and he deeply, deeply supported and led a lot of initiatives in community college education. It's something that's very near and dear to me. And I will always stand with our community colleges as a key part of our education system. Now, we need to make sure that our funding structures provide the resources that our community colleges need between the state and the federal government. And we need to break down the silos, as an aside, between the state and the federal government with a representative who's willing to talk to everyone and work with everyone. And that's something that I bring. We also need to continue to evolve in programs that tie community college education to job opportunities, apprenticeship programs, some of the initiatives like you guys are doing in STEM and in forest management and connecting people to jobs of the future. I'm a big believer in earn while you learn initiatives as well to help with some of the funding for the community college education. I also have a plan to unlock higher education for many folks with a national service type program. I believe there's an opportunity for folks to earn higher education fees being paid for by serving our country in different ways. This doesn't have to be military service, but we can build on the idea of our OTC to provide a mechanism for people to have loans paid off or to earn a higher education by participating in the community and serving our nation in different ways. These are all initiatives I'm super excited to work on. Education played a key role in my life and my family's life, and I admire so much your leadership, Jeff, and what you guys are doing at Lake Tahoe Community College.
Great, thank you for sharing. All right, our final question here is about voter engagement, and specifically student voter engagement.
We are getting down to the final votes. We only have 6 days left.
Yes. So I shared some data at the beginning from the National Study of Learning, Voting, and Engagement. And what that showed is here at Lake Tahoe Community College, but also all throughout the nation, far too many students, and specifically community college students, are involved in the political process and are turning out to get registered and then even following through to vote. So for our students who are tuning in right now, can you tell us why new and specifically youth voters should be excited about this congressional race? Why does it matter to them? And what do you believe should be done to better engage new and youth voters?
Well, Jeff, I hear two things really consistently from new and youth voters. I hear the government doesn't work for me. It's all about money and special interests. So why should I vote? Because it doesn't work for me. I hear that. And then the other thing I hear all the time from new and youth voters is everyone is always fighting. It's so toxic. It's such a turnoff. I don't want anything to do with it. Well, what I say to everyone who has that feeling is Washington isn't working for us in either party. That's why I decided to run for Congress as a businesswoman. But if your sports team is failing, or a company or a business that you work in isn't doing well, the first thing that you have to do to fix that problem is you have to change the people in it. Now, why does that matter? Why does it matter if Congress works for us? It matters because we have really big challenges in our community and our country. We have seen what happens when Congress doesn't work with COVID-19. We have to get our government back working to contain this virus, to get our economy back going, to get life back to normal. We have to get our Congress back working so that we can fight climate change, so that we can create a future for all of us that we want to live in. Those are the consequences of not voting. If you are frustrated that Washington doesn't do anything, if you are frustrated that you turn on TV and you see people out of touch and fighting and divisive like my opponent after 40 years in government, then I ask you to please join me to do something different for our community. That is what my campaign is all about. It is why I stepped out of the private sector to decide to run for Congress, because the greatest problem that we all face, the greatest threat to our future, is that Washington doesn't work for all of us. But we have the power to change that when we vote and when we volunteer to make that change. That is what I offer, and I hope to have all of your support over the next 6 days as we get out the vote and we win this election and we restore the faith in government and we solve some of these problems for all of our future. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bryn, for joining us here tonight and sharing your views. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to participate here on the Zoom and also on our Facebook Live. And we'll be sure to share this further. I have a couple of facts just about how to vote. I want to make sure that especially our community members and students that are turning in have that. We got a slide coming up here. The first thing just I want to let folks know is LTCC is a voting center, right? So we're a designated voting center, and it's actually opening up beginning this Saturday through Monday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And then on election day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So you can vote here or drop off mail-in ballots here on our campus at the Lisa Maloff University Center. So just want to let our students know that should be a very convenient option for you. Of course, Election Day is right around the corner, coming up here on Tuesday, November 3rd. There is some information that we've shared here about conditional voter registration. Encourage you to go to our website. We'll share this information under our news feed if you want more information about how to ensure that you can participate in our civic and voting process. And I think it's one of the great rights and responsibilities that we all have. No matter how you're going to vote, we just really want our students to turn out and let's show. Let's win that ballot bowl. Let's do better than the community colleges up and down the state, and let's really turn out here at Lake Tahoe Community College. So again, thank you for everyone for tuning in and getting informed. Once again, Bryn, thank you for joining us and giving the time to share your thoughts and ideas with our students and community members. And thank you once again for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a good night.